Hey, Ray Del Vecchio here from websiteprofitcourse.com. If you're a WordPress beginner, you're going to love this tutorial. We're going to build this website that you're looking at right here. It's for a yoga studio. It's using the new WordPress full site editing feature, part of the 2023 theme. That's the one we're going to use. And even better than that, I generated a lot of this content using AI, ChatGPT, and Google has their own version, Google Bard, where you can outline an entire website and fill it up with your content and then just go ahead and customize however you'd like. You have full control of editing all of these templates with WordPress. So we're going to dig into this. And a quick note before we begin, you can download the tutorial guide in the description below. This is the playbook that I'm using to go through this tutorial. It's going to show you all the customizations that we're going to go through with the WordPress template editor. And if you learn something from this tutorial, the best way to support is to start your website using one of my recommended hosts. And that's either HostGator, which is going to be the most affordable long-term, or SiteGround, which has better WordPress tools built in. They offer similar introductory rates, but you can lock in that intro rate for longer at HostGator. And also HostGator's renewal price is going to be a little bit less expensive than SiteGround's. This tutorial guide also has a link to all the assets that we're using, including the photos, the color palette, and a few other things. So go ahead and download this tutorial guide and get started with your own website, and then you can jump into the WordPress dashboard with me. That's where I am immediately after installing WordPress. And the first thing you can do is go to the Appearance Theme section to see what theme you have installed. If you're doing it this year, it should be the 2023 theme by default. If you're watching this in the future, you might have the 2024 theme, which is going to have very similar features unless they completely transform WordPress in the next 6 months. Before we build the design, we're going to upload the photos to the media library. That way everything is available. Now you can do this one by one as you're building. So you can download that tutorial guide and download the assets from the link within that guide. I'm going to go ahead and upload these photos. I'll just click add new and then I'll drag and drop them, meet you back here when they're uploaded. I resized them as well so they don't take up that much space. I downloaded all of these from pexels.com, so you can go there if you want to download additional ones or if you want to get the full-size versions. And before we get started, you can take a look at what the design looks like when it's completely blank. As you can see, there's nothing really going on here. You just have your black and white design with a contrast color for the button. So we're going to completely transform this using visual editing. The visual editor uses the content that you have published in your website. So what I'm going to do is create the infrastructure of the website first by publishing pages and posts. So let me jump over to the pages section. You see we have 2 pages here that WordPress publishes when you install, and that's a draft of the privacy policy and then a sample page, which if we view that, you're going to see it's going to have some of the different types of content available to you. And again, it doesn't look that great, but this is a quote. You got your link here, which doesn't really contrast that much. Pretty boring, so we're going to have to customize all of this. I'm going to publish 5 pages. That's going to be a home page, which we're going to do a custom layout for this home page. And I want to set a featured image, but I'm going to insert that image in a different way on the custom homepage layout. So let me publish this right now. And let me go through the other pages, and I'll set the featured images for all the sub pages. So I'll go back and click Add New, and we'll do the About page and set that featured image. And this is where you can either upload files or just go to your media library of images that you've already uploaded. And I'll select one here. Publish that, and I'm going to go through the rest of these pages, which I'm going to do a courses page, a membership page, and an events page, which that we're going to link up to the blog. That way the post section can be used to update people on events that are upcoming. So we're back here with all of our pages published. Just note that I didn't set a featured image for the homepage, which is going to have a custom homepage layout, or the events page, because that's just going to show blog posts, and those blog posts will have featured images. Now, in order to set the home page and the blog page to this events, we have to go into our WordPress settings. So let's go to the settings general, and this is where you set your title and your tagline. And this is where I got ideas from ChatGPT. I created this name Harmony Yoga Studio, and I have some of this text already generated, but I'll just show you how I went about it. So if you go over to ChatGPT, it'll generate whatever you ask it. So you can say, write a 1-line tagline for Harmony Yoga Studio. And it'll give you that information, and you can tweak it however you like. But you can see how it generates it for you. So this one says, find your inner balance and embrace harmony at Harmony Yoga Studio. The one that I generated before, it's unite your mind, body, and soul. And I think I did shorten that, but it does give you a custom answer each time. It'll kind of reword it. Let me paste in our site tagline. The other thing you could do here is set your time zone and the date format. So let's go ahead and save these changes. And the next section is the reading section. This is where we set our homepage. So by default, WordPress is going to show your latest posts on your homepage. If you don't have a custom homepage layout, you're also going to see why the template naming convention is a little bit confusing because of this, but we'll get to that in just a few moments. We're going to set our homepage to display a static page, and this is why you got to publish pages first, because you have to select from the published pages on your site as to which one you want to set the homepage to. So obviously we're going to link that up to home. And as I mentioned, we're going to do the post page and link that up and use the blog posts as events. So let's save these changes, and then we'll jump to the next section. You can go to the discussion section to manage the way that your site handles comments. And one thing I recommend doing is just setting this to users must be registered and logged in. That way you reduce the amount of spam you might get on your website. And last but not least is the permalinks. This is the URL structure in your site. Nowadays, by default, it is set to post name. It takes the title for the post or the page and just generates a URL for that. Sometimes this might be set to plain, which is using an ID structure. So it's going to say P equals and then whatever that page ID or post ID is. And then you also have some of these that include the day, the month, and the year in this, and that just makes it a little bit longer than you need it. I always recommend setting this to post name. With those basics in place, now we can navigate over to our visual editor where we'll customize the theme. So go to Appearance Editor. I believe this is my 4th tutorial ever since WordPress released full site editing. In that time, they've already changed around the way that this looks through all the updates that have come out. So right now, when you go to Appearance Editor, you're going to see this left menu, which is going to show you your templates and your template parts. And you can see the template parts are things that appear in multiple templates, like your header, your footer, post meta, and comments, which they're going to be attached to your blog. And then we have our templates here. These are what generate the pages on your website. So various pages are going to be linked to these templates. For instance, a blog post, a single blog post is going to be run by this single template. And a page like the About page, that's going to be run by the page template. The homepage name is a little bit confusing, and we're going to jump into that once we start customizing. I'll explain why that is. But over here in the right panel, you're just going to have a preview of one of the templates. And if you click on this preview window, it'll jump into the editing where you can see what template that was, which it's the page template. You can go back to those templates by clicking this Manage All Templates button. And then over on the left-hand side here, I like to enable List View. This is going to show you the hierarchy of the template. So right now, this is just showing you the highest level elements, and you can click the drop downs to see every single element on this page. You have your header, which is in a group, which contains a row, and we have our site title on our navigation. So these are what we're going to edit, and this is all done through WordPress blocks, just how you would add content using WordPress blocks to a page or a post. When you select a block here, it's going to show you the hierarchy of that block in the bottom left as well. And if we look down here, we have template, group, post title. So that's another way you can identify where you are within the template. Then over on the right-hand side here, this shows you the settings for the particular block that you have selected, or for the template, which you can jump into here. And within these blocks, you also have a settings option and then a tab over here for the styles for each block. So if you want to change the color of a heading, for instance, you can jump into the styles. And then up top here, this is where you can open up your styles. So this shows the settings. If we click that, we get rid of that right sidebar. Or we can click the styles button here, and this is going to bring our template styles. Within the 2023 theme, there are default styles that you can use. And if you click on the Browse Styles here, you can choose from these pre-built templates, but we're going to do this 100% custom. So let me go back here. From the styles, you can edit the typography, the colors, the layout options, and also the default look of any particular block. And another thing that's useful, which I don't think this was in the first version of full site editing, but if you click this eye icon, it brings up the style book, and that is basically just all of the content elements that you might use. It shows you how this theme styles it. So right now you can see we have headings, paragraph text, lists, quote, and if you go to the other tabs here, you can see how media looks, image, gallery, embedding audio, the cover element, and then into the design, we can see our buttons. So this is just an easy way to see how a specific content type looks if you don't have that within the template design somewhere. And one other note here is that you can click the View button to check out how this looks within a tablet or a mobile-sized window. By default, you're probably going to want to do it on desktop, just so you have a little bit more room to view things. but most of these content blocks drop down to mobile and look pretty good as well. So you might need to do a few customizations, and you'll see that by the end of this video, how we can also customize with CSS. So let's start here by customizing our styles. We'll jump into the typography, and if we go into the text option, we can change the font. So I'm going to select DM Sans, and we'll go to the headings, and I want to make these extra bold. So that's under the appearance option. And I'll go into the buttons and also make this bold. Let me go back and we'll jump into the colors now. This is where we can set our color palette. And part of the assets that you can download from this tutorial include the color palette, which I generated from the site coolers.co. Let me pull that up here. And we'll just need the hex code values here that we can copy and paste over into the color palette. Let me start with the orange, since that'll be our contrast color. I just need to select this value and copy it. And we'll go over into our palette here. And I'll change up this black with that orange. Looks like we got an extra space in here. Let me delete that. And you can see how that updates everything over here. So I'm going to go ahead and update these other three with the variations of those blue colors in the palette. Now we got our default theme color palette set. The other thing we want to do is change this default value for the yellow to our color palette yellow, which is a little bit different. It's almost the same. I mean, I think if you use this, it would probably not be noticeable. But let me go ahead and do that as well. So now we can use these color palettes to easily switch colors on the different elements that we're going to have within this design. We can update our defaults right here in the element section. So we're going to go into the text and make this black. And you could also use the secondary dark blue, but I'm going to use that specifically on the headings, which we can update next. So for all heading levels, I'll make this text dark blue. And the other thing I want to update are the buttons. I do like having the links this orange color, and that's why I made the contrast color orange. But the buttons right now, we have a weird combination here. So I'm going to make this orange buttons with white text. So let's change the text color and the background color. And I just have a note here that I do want to go into the links, because even though the regular link is correct, you might have some issues when you hover over it with the color. So I'm just going to manually set this hover color to orange. And we can also make this a different shade if we'd like. You could also adjust the transparency by using this option down here. But for now, I'm just going to keep the hover color the exact same as the default link color. And with those changes made, we can take a quick look at our style book again. So now we have our headings, the updated heading color. We're going to do a custom design on this quote. It's going to be really simple. And let me go over to the design here, and this is where the button should be. So that's how our buttons are going to look. So let me go ahead now and start customizing the default block style for a handful of blocks here. I'll hit the back button, and let me just first jump into the layout. You can take a quick look at this. These are the options you can set here, the content width and the wide width. You get to select that within these block options here. And then you can also add padding if you like, and your default block spacing between blocks. I'm just going to leave all these at the default values. Now we can go into these blocks here. And before I do that, I just want to save here to make sure I don't lose any of these changes. And when you hit the save button, it's going to tell you what you're updating. So we didn't make any updates to this template. If it did, it would tell us that we were updating the page template or any of these template parts. Right now, you can see all that we're updating is our custom styles. So let's save that. And now I'll jump into the blocks. And the first one that I'll update is the button. So we can either search that out or it's right here. So let me click on the button block. I'll make two small changes with these options available. We'll jump into the border, and we can set our border radius. So let me test this out. I'll do 10 pixels. You can try double that, 20, and see what it looks like. And I'll end up doing, let me split the difference. I'll do 15 pixel radius for this button. And I'm also going to add a shadow. Looks like we can select from shadow types here. And I think this middle one looks good. That one's a little bit too big and blurry. And it makes it look a little bit 3D. So that looks pretty cool. Let me go back, and the next one we're going to do is the headings. So let me search that out. And for the headings, I want to make these center. I don't think they give you any option to do this within the typography. Let me see if you can do it from the layout, and it doesn't look like they give you that option here either. So what we can do is add custom CSS. At the end of this video, you're going to see how we can have all our CSS in one file or one place and copy and paste it. The other way is you can add block CSS here. So if I click this, we can add one line of CSS, and you can look this up to find the formatting and all this, but it's text align, text-align, and then you put a colon and center, and then a semicolon to end the statement. So that's one CSS statement. And basically, this is how web developers get the design for a website before any of this visual editing was a thing. You'd have to do everything with CSS code to style the HTML on the front end. But as we added that in, you can see that this comment heading centered. Now, it doesn't look like this one did, and I think this is because this is a post title element, which is separate from a heading element. So let me do the same update for this post title element. And I can search that out, select it, and add text align center here. Now, you don't actually need that space after the semicolon, but makes it a little bit more readable if you add that in. And lastly, we're going to add our custom style to the quote block. So let me scroll up here, and instead of searching it out, I see it right here. So for this, we'll jump into the typography, and I'm going to make it, let me actually see if I can do this with the style book open. I haven't tested this out yet, and it looks like this is highlighted now that we're updating the information over here. So let me change the size here to large. We're going to make the line height a little bit smaller, which that's only really noticeable when you have multiple lines of text. This is only one line. We're going to change it to 1.2, and then we'll update the background. So I probably need to go into the colors panel here. I'm going to make the background color the light blue, and I think I'm going to make it a little bit more transparent than that, but I want to set the text first to this dark blue. So let me go back to the background, and I'll change this transparency here to a value that makes it a good contrast between the text. And I would say probably about 25%, somewhere in that range. We can hit the back button here. It doesn't look like they have the border radius option, so we can actually add that with the CSS. And as you might expect, it's border-radius. And again, you can look up these CSS statements to make sure you get your syntax correct. But we're going to do 30 pixels border radius, and you can see how that rounded it off. And then we'll add a second line here for the padding. So for this, you can add 4 custom values for the top, right, bottom, and left in that order. I'm going to do 15 pixels, that's padding top, 30 pixels for the padding right, 30 pixels for padding bottom, and if I just end it right there with only 3 statements, it'll just repeat the right value for the left. So this is going to be 30 pixels padding to the left as well. So let's save this. This is, again, just going to save our custom styles. And with all these defaults in place, we can begin editing our templates. I'm back here on the editor page, and we'll start with the homepage template. So let's jump into the templates. If you remember, I mentioned how this naming convention was confusing. So we're looking at the homepage in the right preview window over here, but this is actually run by the page template, and that's because we assigned it as a static page. So by default, WordPress shows your blog posts on the homepage. So that is what the home template controls. It's the page that shows your blog posts. And in our case, we set that to the events page. In order to get a custom homepage template, we can add what's called a front page template. You just got to click the plus button over here, and it's the first option. So let's click front page, and we can start here by editing the header and the footer. So this is just a plain text logo. We're going to change that to an image logo. And I think I may have forgotten to upload that logo. So let me open up list view here, and I'm going to delete this site title block and replace that with a site logo block. So let me remove that, and I can hit this 3-dot icon and just do insert before. And then up here it tells you to type the slash to choose a block. If you start typing, you'll just have a paragraph block, but if you hit that slash, it's going to open up the search box, and I can search out logo or site logo. So let me check this out. I'll hit that upload button, and yeah, I don't have the logo uploaded. So let me go ahead and do that. I'll drag and drop it right on the upload files tab. And right now, this is the assets folder. I have the logo, a Photoshop file of the logo. And this is another area where I used AI. Bing has their own AI generator, image generator. And it took a little while to work with because I tried to generate other types of logos and they didn't come out as well. There was a lot of gradients and just too complicated of designs. But with this one, I just asked for a yoga silhouette, and this is what it gave me. So this was an AI generated silhouette, and all I did was just remove the little floor part of it and add that to our logo, which you can see here. And then I added the text in Photoshop. So I'll drag and drop this logo over here, and we can select it. Let me bring up the settings over here to see if I can change the width, because this is quite small. That logo was 250 pixels wide. So I can go up to that to make it 100% width. Right now that's 263, and it's stretching. Actually, it doesn't even stretch out the image once you get above that. So let me set this to 250. And we want that link to the homepage. And it asks if we want to use this as the site icon, which that's what shows up in the tab in the top left of the tab. That's actually a square image, so we probably should just create that silhouette. So that looks good to me. And then we can jump over to the navigation. And this is an automatic navigation menu. You can see it just shows the published pages on our site. I don't think that they give you the ability to edit these individual pages. This is just a page list. So what you can do is create a new navigation menu. It looks like we can do that by clicking the three-dot icon over here next to menu and then do create new menu. And this allows you to add any pages that you'd like or even custom links and then easily reorder it within the block menu over here. So let me add these. I'll click the plus button and then I can just search out home. That's going to be our first one. And then I'm going to add the rest of these pages. I got all the pages here, and the last thing I'm going to do is add a block for contact, but I don't have a page created. I'm just going to make this an internal link to the footer where the contact information is. So if I hit the enter button, I should be able to change that link. Let me click this up here and hit the link button, and I'll edit that. And the URL is going to be hashtag or # depending on how old you are, and then contact. And basically that tells us that this is linking to an ID on this page, an element with the ID contact. So we have to set this ID on the contact element in the footer. That's really easy to do. So let me just hit this submit button to save that link. And now we're good to go. And I'm also going to add some subpages, but I'll wait to do that until we get through this template here. Now let me jump up to the navigation block here and go into the styles. And within typography, I want to see if I can make this bold. So yeah, I can do that from the appearance menu. And this gives us the drop down to select bold. And let me just save this really quick so you can also see how all these elements are being updated. So on this save, we have a lot more than just the custom styles. You can see it's saving the site icon, the logo, the template part header, which we're editing obviously, and then the header navigation. So we're going to save all this right now and we'll continue. The next thing that we'll work on is the image banner. So we're going to transform this area, get rid of this blog post layout, and create a full width side-by-side image with a short description and a call to action button. So let's jump out of the header and into the next group here. And I'm going to get rid of all of these elements up to the columns. I think I may keep that column element. So let me delete these. And I just right clicked. We actually want to left click on this three-dot menu here and remove blocks. And we can keep this columns block, but we're going to obviously replace all of the content in here. So let me expand the two columns, and let me see if I could just delete all these inner elements here. So now we have two blank columns. I'm going to jump back up to the columns block here, and it looks like I set the width from the individual columns. What I'm going to do is 65-35, and right now this unit is pixels. Looks like we can change it by just clicking on it and selecting the percent. So we're going to do 65% for this one and then set the next one to 35. The other thing I want to check here is the top level group. And I just want to make sure that we have this inner blocks use content width enabled. And from the columns block here, this is where we can set the width. So we select this align element. You can do your max 650 pixels, 1200 pixels, or full width. So that's what we're going to do, full width. And I can also set the colors on here so that when I add blocks within the columns, they'll adhere to the colors that we set. So for this one, we're going to do the background color of our dark blue, and our text color is going to be white. Then in column number 1 here, we're going to do a cover block. Now you could do an image block, but I found that the cover block does a better job with the minimum height feature. So let's search out cover. And we will use the media library to select from our uploaded images. And by default, this cover block has an overlay. Let me go over to the style in the cover block. I'm going to reset this overlay. I'll just make this opacity 0. And to get rid of this space around the area here, I think we need to do this on the columns block since that's where we set our background. Let me go back over to the styles. Now it's showing padding 0 here. I think that if I reset this, if I drag it over to 1 and then go back to 0, it actually will be 0 padding. That's one little bug that I've still noticed. And let me go back to the cover block. And like I mentioned before, they have a setting here called the minimum height. Otherwise, the height of it would just be determined by the amount of text or content you have within this cover block along with the padding. But I'm going to set the minimum height to 500, and that way it makes it a little bit bigger. Let me see if I can delete this paragraph element. Just remove that since we're not going to use it. It may just automatically insert it when I save it. Now in the second column, we're going to add our headline, text, and a button. So let me just click the plus button over here. We'll search for a heading. This is another area where I got text from ChatGPT. So I'll paste it in here and then I'll show you how to generate that. And you can see here that this heading is our dark blue. So it's blue on blue. You can't see anything. It looks like that text color didn't work for the heading, or at least it's not being overwritten. So we can manually set this text to white. Or actually, you know what? I'll do this light blue to give it a little contrast from the description text. Then we can just hit the enter button. That'll bring us to a new paragraph block. Let me paste in this description, which was AI generated. And then I'll hit enter, the slash button to bring up our search box and search for buttons. And I'm going to link this to the about page. You can type out your text link and then hit the link button here to link it up and then search out your about page. And I'm also going to center all this. So we'll center the button, which actually that just probably centers the text. I need to jump up to the buttons block and do the justification center. And I'll do the same thing with the paragraph text. And it looks like our heading text, that default block style of center is working. For this, I do want a little bit of padding around the text. So let me go to the column block here, jump over to the styles, and let me adjust this padding. 2 looks good there. Now we do have a little bit of space underneath this image. That's something I could potentially fix with CSS, or I could maybe make this a little bit larger, this cover minimum height. Let me adjust that to 550, and it looks like that gets rid of it. Let me save this. And I'm just going to jump over to ChatGPT to show you how you can generate this text. So we already did this for the one-line tagline. Now let me do the same thing. Write a 3 to 4 word headline for the homepage. And the cool thing about this is that it remembers your previous conversations. You can give it a lot of restrictions. Like the more restrictive you can be with your prompt, the better answer you'll get. And you can see here the one they gave me was elevate your wellness. And you can also get a few examples. Do write 5 headlines and see what comes up. So now they're giving us kind of like a longer form headline. Let's just do the description. Write a 2 to 3 sentence description. And it generates the text for you. And you can jump in here and personalize it to your liking. Obviously, if you do everything with AI-generated text, it's not going to be human. So you want to add the human element to it. But a lot of people just get stuck on some of this text generation or writing text like this. I know I do. This can really increase your productivity if you learn how to use it. I'm back here in the site editor, and I have a couple quick fixes that I'd like to do now that I'm looking at it with the wide screen with all these sidebars disabled. So number one is there's a little bit too much space in between the header and this first row here. So let me click up into here and I'll enable list view. I want to go into the row in the header here. So we have header, group, row, and let me open up the settings for this row. And I meant to click the settings. I clicked the styles button instead. So I'm in here and I can go over to the styles tab within this block setting. And you can see that we have all 4 of our padding values here broken out, top, right, bottom, left. Right now this is bottom 2 padding, so I'm going to change this to 1. And I might even be able to get away with 0. It looks like there is another padding added somewhere else here. It might be the group level. So the best way to identify that, at least I've found, is to go on the front end and use Chrome Inspector, which I'll probably show you that at some point in this video. But that looks good for now. The other thing I want to do is if we disable these sidebars again, you can see that her face gets cut off. So we want to change the focal point of that cover. So we can select that cover block, bring up our settings, and adjust the focal point by dragging it here. And with that done, we can see how it looks, and that looks a lot better. And the other thing is I'd like to vertically align this, which I believe we have the option to do that within the column. So that's the first column. I have the second column selected. I'll open up the settings. Now that I'm looking at it, that option is right here. Kind of would be nice if they duplicated that somewhere in the settings, but you can select your alignment vertically within columns this way. And before we move on, let me save this, and I want to see what it looks like on the front end, because every now and then you're going to have issues with the visual builder in the front end. There might be a discrepancy. Again, this is kind of like little bugs. And with CSS, you saw how we write CSS statements to customize it. A lot of times there's multiple CSS statements that apply to one element, and one of them gets precedence. So that's usually the cause of most of these issues. So let's go and take a look at this on the front end. You can already see we got a little issue. We have the cover element with a little bit of padding to the left. You see this blue background. I'm not quite sure why that's happening. The other issue that we have here is the button text. So this, I believe, is because our links by default are orange color, and obviously our button background's orange. We could just manually set this button to a text color white. Now we can look at Google Chrome Inspector. This is a perfect opportunity. If you right-click and hit the Inspect button with Google Chrome, it'll bring up the code behind the site, and let me drag it into this window here. So just like the Visual Builder, when you hover over an area, it's going to highlight that within the Chrome window. So I just want to see where this padding is coming from, and you can see that it's coming from this div with the class WP block column. So that means we do have a padding that's being added to this column. So we'll jump into the button and just manually set our text color to white, and hopefully that'll fix our problem. And let me go back over to this column here and check our padding settings. So it looks like we do have our padding set to 0. Perhaps we can customize that with CSS if necessary. I want to see if this works. And it looks like we're good to go. So that is a good example of conflicting CSS. If you do have any issues like that, just go ahead and try and update it at the block level instead of at the default styles level. And lastly, you should be able to override it with custom CSS if necessary. And like I said, we're going to get to just a little bit of that at the end of this tutorial. So let's move on with this homepage design. The next section we're going to do is just going to be a 3-widget section with text and a button. In fact, it's going to look almost exactly like this. We're going to have a headline, a paragraph, and a button, but the colors are going to be a little bit different. So let's go to the top level here. I'm going to reduce this group hierarchy, and I want to add another group right under it. So we'll do insert after, and I can type out / to search for our group. This is asking us for our group block layout. And I'm just going to select this first one, and we're going to add our columns block manually here. Now, as you start to insert blocks, you should have your most used blocks up in this section. So you don't always need to search it out if you continuously use it. We'll click our columns, and over on the right, we can select 3 columns. We're going to do the same setting at the group level, which is inner blocks use content width. And then this columns block here, we can adjust the width from the alignment button. So we'll do full width on this. And then we're going to jump back up to the group level and change the background and the text color. So we're going to make our background this light blue color. And then our text is going to be our dark blue. And then we're going to make our button color this teal as opposed to the orange, just so it contrasts this previous section. Then we can edit the padding and the margin. They also have the block spacing option. I'm going to set this padding to 1. That way we have a little bit more room with our background. And I want to see what our margin is set to. It's probably set to 0. So let's jump back over to ChatGPT, and I'm going to show you how you can generate this text. I'm going to ask for this to please write a 3-widget section for the events, community, and courses page that include 1 headline under 4 words, 1 paragraph of text. And I'll write the buttons myself since the buttons are just going to be linking over to these pages. So let's see what it gives us here. And you can see how it's generating all this text for you. To me, this is one of the coolest things that I've seen in a really long time in the tech world. This is kind of being built into all the tech tools nowadays. I recommend that you at least give it a test and try it out. So now we're back here in the editor, and I just want to copy and paste my content. So we'll start with the first column here, and we're going to insert a heading. I want to make this slightly smaller than the first heading. So we're going to change this to large. Let me hit enter, and I will paste in my paragraph that I have. I'm going to center this. And it doesn't look like this pop-up box is coming up. So let me see if I save this and refresh the page if that works. Might be another little glitch here. So I'm going to go back, refresh this page, and jump back into this template. I'll open up my list view. And yeah, now that I click it, this pop-up window comes back. So that was another little weird glitch happened in the midst of recording this. And I've had a lot of people that get these issues and they ask me why I don't. And in previous tutorials, I've just edited that stuff out. You know, I do record a lot longer and cut it down because I do hit these issues, or, you know, have a question with what I'm doing. It's not completely natural to me since this is pretty new. So let me center this. I'll add my button. And we'll call this View Events, which we can link over to the blog page or the events page, which is our blog. And then I want to manually update this button. We're obviously going to justify it center. So I'll jump up to the buttons level, justify center, and then go back to the button, go to our styles, and I will set this text to white and our background to the teal. So that's the look of this column. And we do want to add a little bit of space. I could do that at the columns level, but I'm going to actually add the space around every one of these column blocks, the individual column blocks. So let me go over to the style for this first column, and I'm going to add a padding of 1. And I'll do that for these other column blocks. And then I'm just going to copy and paste the content that I have in the first one into these other columns. And just update the wording. So you can do that by selecting from the list view, do the first column, hit the shift button, select them all, and then you can left click on this 3-dot icon and do copy blocks. And then I'll click into this second column and just hit Control V, and that should paste it for us. Do the same thing over here in the third column. And then let me just update this text, and I'll join you back here when I'm done with this. Now this section is complete, and we'll move on to the next one. And for this, we're going to use a pre-built pattern and customize it. You can see when I hover over the plus button down here, it says Add Pattern. And this is just a group of blocks that's already styled for you. So let me do Browse All. And I'm looking for a specific one. Let me hit the Explore All Patterns, and it brings up this pop-up. You can see how they already have some pre-built styles for things like a call to action, another 3-widget section that's styled in a different way. You got almost like a link tree here. I'm looking for a cover element one. Let me see what section it's in here. The last time I used this, they showed them all at once, and here it is, this Django one. You can see this is basically just big text with a cover element that has an overlay. It looks like they inserted this below the footer, so I'm going to have to move this up. Let me bring up the list view, and I'll just drag that cover element up a level. And now I'll put it in the group. I got to make sure I drag it outside, and there we go. We can hit the replace button here and open our media library, and I'll select this image. And by default, it has the overlay set. We're going to remove that overlay and just use the duotone option, which is also set over here. So let me reset this overlay and the overlay opacity. And it still looks like we have a little bit here. Yeah, the reset took us to 50%. I want to drag that all the way down to 0 so we don't have an overlay. And then I'll click the duotone filter. And you can set your shadow color and your highlight color. So let me click on shadows here, and I'll set this to our dark blue color, our secondary color. And then I'll click the highlights and change this to our light blue color. So that matches our theme pretty nicely. And let me go back to the settings here. I'm also going to change the focal point. And now we can work on our text. And I'm going to change this text to meet the team. So it's going to be 3 lines, but I'm going to make it all the same color. I don't want this varying color. So let me delete these first 3 paragraph elements. And I'll change this to meet, all in caps. Change our text color to dark blue. I'm going to keep the size the same, but I'm going to make it bold, as bold as I can. Well, actually, let me do extra bold. Then I'll just duplicate this block twice. I believe the keyboard shortcut is Control-Shift-D. And as I did that, it looks like there's actually a conflicting keyboard shortcut with my recording software. So I'll just hit the three-dot icon and hit duplicate. And let me do this once more. And I'll change this to meet the team. And below that, we'll add a buttons block. And we can link this up to the About page, or you might want to do an instructors page as a subpage to the About page. We want to add some space in between the text and the button. They're a little too close to each other. So we can add a spacer block. Let me click up into the text, hit the enter button, and looks like I'm on the wrong line of text here. There we go. So I inserted that in between the and team, but I'm just going to search out for a spacer block. I can move that down by hitting the down arrow here. And you can adjust the height of that by setting the number here to whatever you like. 100 pixels is what it's defaulting to. I want to go a little bit smaller than that. Maybe try 50. That looks good for this section. Let's go ahead and save. And the last thing that we're going to work on is the footer section. So let's scroll down and select our footer from the list view. And we'll expand it. So we got a footer, a group, a row. We'll start with the group level, and we're going to change the background to our yellow color. So let me select background instead of text there. This is a little bit too bright, so let me change the transparency of this down to something that's a lot more subtle, probably around maybe like 20-25%. That looks good. And then I'll also adjust the padding. For this one, I'm going to unlink the padding so we can set the top, right, bottom, and left separately. And for the top and the bottom, I'm going to do 3. I was about to say pixels, but this is definitely not 3 pixels. It's a different unit, a relative unit. Top and bottom, we're going to do 3. And the left and the right, we're going to do 2. And after I save this, I'm going to go on the live website because it looks like we may have to adjust some spacing in between some of these sections. So I'll see what levels we can apply that to using Chrome Inspector when we're done here. I'm going to keep this row of text, and I'm just going to insert a columns block before it, and we're going to do a 3-column area. So we can select 3 equal columns. And before I fill these in, I'm also going to insert a social icon block below this 3-column area. So let me select the columns, and I'll do insert after. And I can search out social. We'll just fill this out quickly. I'll hit the plus button, and we can do Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest. And I will quickly style these. So first of all, you got to add the links, or else the icons won't show on the front end. So I'm just going to quickly link these up. And now I'll style them. So the first thing I'm going to do is center them. I'm going to make these icons larger. It looks like we have to do that from the size. I'm going to make them the biggest they can be, huge. We're going to change this to logos only instead of the default. And instead of making this the social icon color, we're going to make it a solid color to match our theme. So we're going to do the dark blue. And lastly, what I like to do on the social icon settings is make sure that these open in a new tab so they keep your website open. So that section's done, and now we can start filling in the columns above that. This is pretty narrow, so it's probably set to 650 pixels wide. We're going to bump that up to 1200 instead of doing full width. And in the first column, we're going to do an email sign-up form. So this is going to be really simple. Let me search out heading here really quick. Email sign-up is not built into WordPress, so you're probably going to want to use a third-party email service provider if you want to do email marketing, send newsletters, for instance, like a yoga newsletter. They normally give you code that you can copy and paste, or they might have a WordPress plugin, depending on the provider you're signing up with. So I'm going to keep this simple right now and just do a heading, 1 line of paragraph text, which I can just type out here. I'll center this paragraph. And what you can do if you're inserting code is just do a custom HTML block. So I'm just going to post in example code from the email service provider that I use, which is MailChimp. All this really is an HTML form, but you'll see how it looks on the front end, and you'll also see how we can customize it a little bit using CSS. I do want to make this headline a little bit smaller. So let me do XL size on that. So let's jump over to column number 2. And for this column, we're going to make the background our dark blue. And this is where we'll add our contact section. So let me click the plus button, search out a heading. I'm going to type out contact us, and it looks like this is the same color as the background, so we can't see it. So I need to adjust our text color, and we're going to make this heading orange. We'll also make that XL. And because we got the background, I do want to add some spacing at the column level. So let me go up to the column. So let me do padding of 2. And I'll hit the enter button here, and I'm just going to add a fake address. As I'm typing it out, this is black, so I probably should have set the text color at the column level, but I'm just going to do this manually. Let me just quickly change this text to white, and I will finish out this address here. I'll center this paragraph text. Like I mentioned when we did the navigation menu, when we click that, we want that to come to the Contact Us section. So if we go back up here to our Contact button, you can see that the URL for that is #contact. So that means we're linking to an HTML element that should have the ID of contact. So if we go back down here, I usually like to do it on the title. So we'll click the headline, and if you go into the advanced, this is where you can set your HTML anchor, and that's what sets the ID. So if we just set this to contact with no hashtag, that will make our link work and jump down to this area. The other thing we want to do is add in the menu here. So I'll do another heading. In fact, let me just copy and paste this heading. I'll duplicate it, move it down. But because I just duplicated that, I probably shouldn't have duplicated it because these HTML anchors have to be unique. So obviously, we're not going to have an HTML anchor for this quick links section. And I will hit the enter button. We'll search out navigation. And here's our menu. We will, again, adjust our settings. So we'll do center. We want to do the orientation down. Let's go over to the style so you can see this. We'll make our text white. And I also want to set this overlay menu to off because I don't want a mobile menu showing here in the quick link section. And then lastly, in this third column, I'm simply going to embed a Google map. So from Google, you can share Google Map, and that also gives you HTML code. So this is going to be another custom HTML block. And you should get iframe code when you embed a Google Map. And what I did here was customize the width, the height, along with the custom CSS. This is also CSS built in, just inline CSS, where we set the minimum height. So I have a minimum height set of 350 pixels, and we made the width and height 100, so it fills this entire column area. Let's save this, and we can take a look on the site how it looks and figure out what kind of customizations we need to do to fix any issues or make it look more coherent. So we do have this large white space in between these two sections. We got to clean that up. And we got the same thing, a little white space here above the footer. You can see how our email sign-up code here isn't styled. We have to do that to make it look nice. And then we also have some spaces in between our columns. We have our space at the bottom of the page, a little white space down here. And it's also useful to take a look on mobile. So let me drop this down till we get to a mobile width. And you can see how our menu looks. So let's go ahead and fix all these little things on the homepage template. And all the other templates are going to be a lot more simple because obviously we're going to have our header and our footer done, and we don't have all these custom sections on the inner pages. I'll open up the inspector to see where these white spaces are being added. And let me bring the inspector window right over here. I'm going to just scroll or hover up a couple levels here, and you can see that we have a margin top and a margin bottom. And this is on the group block, which I could tell from this class, WP block group. So this has a margin top and a bottom, which are preset spacing, and a margin block start. So I think we might need to adjust some of this with CSS, but let me go to this group level and just see if I could set the margin to 0. So I click that. Well, we have the cover selected. I want to jump up to the group. Go over to the settings, and yeah, you can see the margin top is set to 3 and the margin bottom is set to 5. So that was the preset values that we saw in Google Chrome Inspector. So I'm going to make this slightly less with a margin top of 2, and the bottom we can drag all the way down to 0. Then the next one is the white space under this section. So let me hover up a few levels to find out where this is being added. And it doesn't look like it's with this section. It looks like it might be the footer. So yeah, I can see right now when I hover over that, you can see the orange appear, and that's the margin top. It looks like this is actually not margin top. This is the margin block start 1.5 REM. So it looks like this is added to the footer and maybe the header as well. But the header, since our background is white, we don't notice that. It looks like the white space at the bottom is not part of the footer, but I think that's part of the highest level HTML element, and that's the site blocks. So this is kind of like the wrapper around all of our blocks. So I believe that these two values I'm going to have to update with CSS in order to get this working correctly. We'll do that after I finish off a couple of these other fixes with the block editor. So let me go into the footer area. And what I'm going to do here is add a little bit of padding to the bottom of the first column, because when this drops down on mobile, it looks like this form is kind of a little bit too close to this black background, or I'm sorry, the blue background. So let me go into this first column, and I'm going to add a padding bottom to this. I can first unlink the sides, and I'm going to make the padding bottom 2. Now I also want to get rid of this space in between the columns. I don't think this has anything to do with the margin of the padding at the column level. Instead, I think maybe we can set something up here at the columns level right above that. So let's go into the columns block styles. Let me give a shot with this block spacing. And it looks like, yeah, now that when I click that and set it to 0, again, when they show this block spacing, it looks like it's set to 0. But then if you drag it and then actually set it to 0, you get rid of that spacing. So I wish that they had some type of not set. I think if you don't see the value over here, you can see it says 0 right there. If you don't see that value, then it's probably not set, but it looks like it is. So that's something they should update with the UI. And then I could put a padding at the bottom of this columns block or above the social icons. Since I'm here, I could do it with either the padding or perhaps the margin. So let me unlink this and add the padding bottom. I'll do a padding bottom of 2. That gives us a little bit of room there. So overall, I think this is good, and I believe that the rest of these we're going to have to update with CSS. So let me refresh this. And now it looks like our map is not taking up the full space here. Not sure why that is. Hopefully everything else here is fixed, and it looks like it is. Now, one thing that I think is happening with this, for some reason, WordPress is adding these paragraph tags to this iframe code. I don't think that should be happening. That's another bug where this should just be the plain HTML code that you paste in. Now, for some reason, I don't think that got added to my form over here. So I don't know exactly what's going on with this. I'm going to get rid of these paragraph tags, save it, and see if it updates. But let me refresh this, and hopefully that fixes it. And yeah, we're good there. And now the final thing I want to do is add a little bit of CSS. Now, in the previous tutorial, I mentioned how WordPress got rid of the appearance customize menu. So if you go back to the WordPress dashboard, there used to be a customize menu, submenu under this appearance section, and that's where you'd be able to paste in CSS code. But now with block theme editing, they have another area in the editor where you can add it. I don't know if this was part of the original launch or if I just missed it. But if you go into the template here, it doesn't look like it's in this 3-dot icon. Let me open up the styles, and I think it's here, the 3-dot icon from the styles menu. So if you do this, you can click additional CSS, and this is where you can paste in your CSS code. So I'm going to paste in what I got. These are the template editor fixes. Let me scroll down. And it looks like it fixed that. Let me just get rid of it again. And then you can see when we paste it in how it updates. So all I'm doing is targeting that WP site blocks, the container, as well as the footer. And I'm resetting the padding bottom along with the margin block start. So those are what we saw on Google Chrome Inspector. And by the way, when you see this with the slash and the asterisk, that is a comment. So I basically just divide my CSS into sections here. These are the template editor fixes, and you can end it with this asterisk and slash. And then I'm going to paste in my code to style the email signup form. So for this, we're targeting the HTML form element. That's what you see right over here. You got your input email. This is where people put their email. This is the type of input field. You can see we target that over here. So you can kind of see how the HTML links up with the CSS. You just got to make sure that you have the formatting correct. But I do a few things here. I make sure that the text is aligned. By default, it's using a basic font. So I'm inheriting the font from our theme. I'm also centering the email field, adjusting the size and the padding. And then we have our input type equals submit. So this is our submit button. And then I style this so it looks more like our theme as opposed to that just basic default button style from the browser. We can't see this in the preview window, although we can actually hit the preview button here, and that shows us it with the white background. So let me save this. We're saving our custom styles, and let's take a look at how that looks when we refresh the page. So we look good here, and this little icon pop-up, this is LastPass. This is an add-on that I use. That's my password manager. This matches now very nicely, and we got rid of all of our white spaces. So we can move on to the inner pages. We're back here on the editor, and we can go into our templates now, and I'm going to jump into the page template, which runs all of the inner pages. Let's expand the list view, and we're going to go right into our group with our main content here. And the way that I'm going to make this slightly unique is by creating a 2-column layout on this page. So I'm going to have the post featured image on the left. Right now, that's what's showing up here. This is the post featured image block, and you can set your featured image on all of these pages. So let me go up to this second group level, and I'm just going to do an insert before to add a columns block. And right now, this block insertion is kind of overlapping with this featured image. That's kind of a little glitch as well. Let me just continue with this. I'm going to select 50-50, but we're actually going to make this 40-60. I'll set this to 40%. Right now, this is set to pixels, so I got to change this unit. And then we'll jump over to the second one and make it 60%. And then what I'm going to do here is remove this post title, because the featured image and the post title are grouped, but I want to separate them since we're going to have the post featured image on the left and the title to the right. So I'm going to move this post title out of this group. Let me put it above the post content. And then I'm going to move this group inside the first column. Then I'll take the post title and the post content, select both of them, and then drag that into column number 2. We still have this little glitch where it's a little bit offset. If you see we select the column, this featured image is kind of floating above that. So let me save this right now. We can take a look on the live website to see if this issue is happening, and maybe I'll refresh this editor, because I've had this issue pop up a few times. Just one of the few bugs that you're going to run into, which I'm sure WordPress is going to clean up as they continue to update this. And it looks like we do still have this issue, but I would bet that if we set either the margin or the padding, it should fix that. Let me see if I can do that just right at this top level here. So let me go to the group. We'll go into the group styles. And you can see that our margin top is set to 3. Our margin bottom is set to 0. Let me see if I drag this down, if that fixes it, and it's actually making it worse. So I'm going to set this to 1 right now. I'm going to set the bottom to 3, and that's affected right down here, right before the footer. And then let me go into the post featured image. Perhaps adjusting something here will fix it. So this margin bottom is set to 3. Doesn't look like that's really doing much there. And the margin top right now, it's giving us this manual value. Let me click that button there, and we can adjust that, and it looks like that fixes it. So I'm going to set the margin top to 1. You got to play around sometimes with the spacing around this, the margin, the padding, and you saw before how that relates to the CSS. That's how all this visual builder stuff is working behind the scenes. So just like the banner that we did on the home page, I'm going to remove this overlay. So we'll reset both of these, and it looks like that reset actually did take this to 0. I think last time I took it to 50%. And we're going to apply the same duotone to this. So let's select our duotone filter. We'll do our shadow color of our dark blue and our highlight color. And I'm going to add one thing under the post content here. Let me open up list view. Right under the post content, I'm going to add a button. And this is going to be like a call to action. That way you don't have to add this to each page individually. It's just going to be built right into the template. And we can link this up to the membership page or wherever people can contact this company. So I'll just do join us, and obviously you want to link that up. And I did the text align center. Sometimes I confuse that with the justify. And I'm also just going to remove these comments because we don't want people commenting on the pages. You might have that on the events or the blog posts, but generally on a static page like the About page, you don't want people commenting on that. So let me remove this, and you can see this is also a template part. So let's remove the comments, and that's all I'm going to do on the page template. So you can see how quickly we ran through these changes now that we have the header and the footer in place. What I can do now is go into the About page and add some content here so you can see how this looks. Obviously, we have no post content. We just have the title and the button. You can go to ChatGPT and ask it to write an About page, including a testimonial and headlines. I already got that done, so let me pop that information into the About page. So we can go back here out of the website template editor and just go to our pages. These are where our published pages are. And just like the template, you build with blocks. So I'm going to paste in the plain text that I grabbed from ChatGPT, and I'll style this. So right here, this is going to be our testimonial, and this is the byline. You can see how some of these got pasted in as one paragraph with a line break as opposed to multiple blocks. So right here, this is the heading. If I hit back and hit the enter button, you can see how it makes it a new paragraph block, and the same thing here. I'm just going to do that, and we can convert this paragraph now to a heading. I'll do the same thing here. I'll convert this to a quote, and you can see how that automatically applies our block style that we created. And then I'll just take this citation, I'll remove it there and add it right down here. Now we can add a spacer to separate this. We'll make this 50 pixels. And then I have one other heading here. That's this line. So I'll do the same thing there, add it to a new WordPress block, and transform it to a heading. And then if you go from the block settings over to the page settings, this is where you set your featured image, which I already did. So let's update this, refresh our page, and there you go. Very quickly put together a unique look for this. We can go over to one of these other pages where I don't have content. This is the events page, the blog template, which we're going to work on next. But here's the membership page. So I don't have any page content in there, but you can see how a large vertical image looks on that. Same thing over here on the courses. So not only can you use it to generate text, but you can also generate business ideas. So let's jump over to ChatGPT right now, and you can ask it for ideas for courses that you can offer. So I'm going to ask it for 3 courses we can offer and write one short paragraph description for each. This is going to be our page content. But you can ask this anything. I mean, you can go into pricing ideas, packages, marketing, all that kind of stuff. To some degree, you're going to get some generic answers since this is giving you the most popular answer across a lot of information within its index. It's a really great starting point. And then I'll also generate a subpage, which I'm going to show you how this can also give you a little bit of humor in your answers. I'll go back over here to the WordPress admin and go into our courses page and paste in some of this content. So I pasted this directly from ChatGPT, and you can see this got styled as a list because they gave us list format. Let me open up the list view up here. I want to see if I could transform it. Yeah, they give you the option to transform it to a paragraph. And we have the same issue here where we just have a line break instead of a WordPress block. So these are going to be our headings. And we can convert all these paragraph blocks to headings. So that's all I'm going to do for this page. Just quickly showing you how you can build your design through the combination of your page content and your template. Let's update that and we'll refresh our page. And these titles are a little bit long, but still looks a lot nicer once you load it in with a little bit of content. I think by default, people might assume yoga is more of a ladies' endeavor and exercise, but we're going to do something for the guys. So I'm going to ask ChatGPT to write page content for yoga for guys called Broga. So this is my prompt: write a page for a class called Broga, which is yoga for the bros. Let's see how this can inject a little bit of humor into our content. Now, I think this did a good job of writing the content, but I wouldn't say it's the funniest. So you can ask it to do it in certain styles. So I'll say rewrite this, but make it more lighthearted and funny. And let's see how it adjusts it now. And so now we get a different title: Unleash Your Inner Bro Flow. And this one, what goes down in a Broga sesh. Get ready for some serious brotastic moves. Obviously, You might have to rewrite some of this. Some of it's going to be a little bit cheesy, but I just think this is so funny that you can get content not just written for you in a generic style, but also do it in the style that you want, whether it's persuasive, professional, or like this, a little bit tongue-in-cheek. So we're going to make this as a subpage of courses, and you're going to see how this affects the menu. Let's click Add New, and then paste in my content. When I asked for it, it actually gave me a lot of emojis. So there was an emoji at the beginning of every single paragraph. I mean, AI's got a sense of humor. It's kind of like FunnyBot from South Park. So let's set the featured image to our two bros here. We'll set that. So if you scroll down, go to the page attributes, and you can select your parent page and either search it out or select from it here. So we're going to make this a parent page or a child page of courses. So we'll publish this, and we can go over to our live website. And it looks like that didn't get added. I actually need to do that manually. And I can edit the template part. I'll go to the editor. You can either go right into one of your templates or go to the template parts and just edit the header. So I'll jump in here, open up list view, and just go into my navigation. And let me click the plus button here. I think I'll be able to add this and then just make it a submenu item here if I drag and drop it on the list view. And yeah, it looks like we did that. And we can go into our navigation settings. And what I want to change here is the submenu overlay and background. So I'm going to make that dark instead of light. So let me do the overlay background, our dark blue, and our text white. And that's a quick style on that. And then if we hit the save button, I'm going to go back to our live website, and I just want to see how this looks on mobile. So we'll drag it down until we hit our mobile menu. And when we click that, you can kind of see how it's styled. And I'm not a huge fan of the way this looks. In fact, I'm going to add custom CSS. You see it's right aligned, and we get that left indent. I think if it was left aligned and we had a left indent, it would look better. But that right indent, for some reason, just looks a little weird to me. But we can go to our Broga page, check out our content there, and also look at our live drop-down menu on the desktop. The next part of the website that we'll work on is the home template, and that's what shows our blog posts, which are linked to our events page. I got this loaded up with 3 posts, and the first one here, this is usually installed every time that you install WordPress. It's just called the Hello World post, and it gives you an example of what a blog post looks like. I also set the featured image on all these, and you'll see how that helps when we go into the appearance editor here to update this template. So let's go into the templates. We'll open up the home template, and right now this is showing our featured images along with the content that we have loaded in to our blog. So let me go ahead and make the updates here, and this is going to go quick. I'm not going to do much on this one because it already looked pretty good. So let me open up list view, and I'll open up our main group. I'll change this title to upcoming events, and then let me go back up to the group level. There is a lot of spacing here, so I could probably tighten this up a little bit. Right now the margin top is set to 3, the bottom set to 5. So I'm going to do a margin top of 1. And you can see the bottom here, we have another section that we'll probably just delete. This is set to 5 now. I'll drop this down to 3. And as you can see down here in our footer, our iframe code has that extra paragraph tag. I don't like that that's happening. That is a little bit of an issue because that does affect the way it looks on the front end with the height. Now, one workaround you could do is style this paragraph tag potentially, add a class to it or an ID. But I'm just going to quickly remove this. It's going to get saved, and it seems that whenever I open up this template editor window, that usually gets added to it. So I'm going to have to look into that to see if they have that noted as a bug and whether or not it should be fixed. And I'd also like to tighten up this white space. I don't know if this is getting set from the query loop or the heading right here. So yeah, I can see the margin bottom on this heading is set to 4. So I'll also change that to 2. And if we click on one of the individual blogs here, you can see this is using the post template block. And these are the components of that: the featured image, the title, the excerpt, the date, and then a spacer. All I'm going to do is just center this excerpt, and then I can go down to the date here. I'm going to unlink this, and I will center it and make it bold and dark blue. Let me hit the typography 3 dots here, bring up our appearance, and this is where we can edit the bold text. And all we're going to do is delete this section, the columns here. We can just delete this entire block. And it's up to you whether you want to keep the spacer or not. You can obviously adjust the margin and kind of make that function as the spacer. I'll delete the spacer as well. So I'm good with those changes on the blog. We can save this. We're updating our home template along with the footer again. And let's go over to the events page, and you can see our new layout here. And the last one that we're going to edit is the single post template. And that's what runs the page for all of these blog posts. So if we click into one of these, you can see our featured image along with our blog content. And then posts are also going to show the categories and the tags that you can set on the back end. So let's go back to our editor, and we can bring up our single template. For this one, I'm going to make the post featured image max 650 pixels wide instead of 1200. I do want to add a little bit of margin at the top of this group, so we have some space in between our featured image and the header. Looks like we have another instance of this dead space where the margin top is set to 3, but that is going into the header area. So for some reason, that little glitch happens without even editing this template, and we have to do something, I believe, to the post featured image. Let me see if this here fixes it. And yeah, this margin, once again, is set to edit this manually instead of using this drag and drop editor, which I don't know why that's happening by default. That doesn't seem like it should happen by default. But I'm going to go ahead and see if I edit this, and that fixes the problem. So yeah, I don't know why that happens, but for some reason it looks like you got to go into the post featured image and update the margin top. Otherwise, you're going to have some type of overlapping sections for no particular reason. I'm just going to use plain images on this one. We're not going to do a duotone or an overlay, so we can reset both of these. I won't change anything on the post title or the content. We'll just jump down to the post meta section and expand that. And this is also a template part. There's a little too much going on here. If we go to our live website, we're showing our category information and the date on the left, the tags on the right, and then we have a little byline here. I'll completely remove the tags and then center this information. So let me open up the group here. Then we got a columns block, 2 columns, and the first column has 2 rows. The second column has a stack. So I'm going to make this all one column. So I'm just going to take these rows and drag them out of the columns block. And then I'm just going to delete this entire columns block. The first column is empty. The second one has the tags, which we're not going to use. So that'll simplify that. And then we can center both of these. So for this, you can do it at the row level, justify items center. We'll do the same thing on the first row. And then we can change the separator. Instead of doing a full line separator, we can make it a little more subtle with 3 dots. So let me select the separator from the list view. This is a good example where it's hard to select that if you're just pointing and clicking. And we can go to dots instead of wide line, and we're going to make these dots our teal. And those are a handful of quick edits that you can make on this template. We'll save here. And the last thing that I want to do is just add that little bit of custom CSS for the sub navigation menu. So let's refresh our page here, and you can see the way that our blog posts now look. Let's go back to the CSS, which we get to from the styles, 3-dot icon, and then additional CSS. And I can add a new section here. I'll just call this navigation, put our CSS comments around that, and then I'm going to paste in my code. Let me save it first. We can take a look at it, and then I can kind of explain what we're editing on these. So we'll refresh here. And this is our desktop submenu. Let's drop it down to mobile. And you can see what I did was get rid of that indentation. And then I just added an icon, a little like side arrow. So let me go back to the CSS. And the key here really is targeting the correct elements. So if you have a bit of CSS that you need to overwrite, I usually just copy and paste that right from Google Chrome Inspector, the exact element that's targeting, because if you use a different name, it might not have the same precedence. So you can see here I'm eliminating the spacing on the right by setting the padding right to 0. And then we're using this before, I think it's a pseudo element. So we're adding this content, and this is the code for that side arrow. And then we set the color right here. And then the last thing that I did was add a little bit of spacing, a little padding under those submenu links. So it looks more complicated than it is because the elements that we're targeting. It's got a long name, multiple classes, but anytime you need to fix or overwrite something, if there's a bug, you can almost always overwrite it using CSS. And as I mentioned, use the link in the description below to grab a copy of this tutorial guide, and I'll give you the exact CSS that we're using that you can just copy and paste to do this yourself. Now, I'm not going to go into detail, but I do want to mention that if you wanted to take this one step further and actually sell something, what you can do is go to the plugin section. This is where you can add functionality to your website. In order to sell online, there's several ways you can do it. The first thing you can do is just use a completely off-site service, some type of third-party service that gives you payment links, something like PayPal. And all you got to do is link up to PayPal from your WordPress website, and you're up and rolling. If you're just selling digital products, there's a popular plugin called Easy Digital Downloads. Now, I don't have any personal experience with it, so I don't know how well it works, but you can see here that it's got over 50,000 active installations. It's got a high rating, 4.5 stars, and it was last updated a week ago. And those are generally the 3 things that you want to look for in a plugin. And if you want to go one step further, you can use the most popular e-commerce plugin on WordPress, and that's WooCommerce. It's going to be the first one to pop up. You can see this is updated 2 days ago, even more recent, 5 million active installations and over 4,000 reviews. It's actually developed by the team that works with WordPress, and that's this company Automatic. So if you want to get a complete business setup, WooCommerce is definitely the way to go. The other plugin that I use all the time is Yoast SEO, and this lets you write custom titles and descriptions for all your posts and pages to optimize them for search engine traffic. There's plugins for anything else you could think of, social media integration, custom post types. If you wanted to actually create an events menu up here, you could do that if you wanted to separate your events from your blog posts. There's all kinds of ways that you can hack into WordPress using the plugins as well as custom code. That's why it's the most powerful. So that's all I got for this tutorial. Now, as you saw throughout this tutorial, the WordPress full site editing unlocks a lot of capabilities, but it is still in its infancy. There are a few bugs that we saw today. I'm sure there's certain features that they're going to continue to add as new WordPress versions are released. It really helps to understand the entire WordPress ecosystem. And to help you do that, I put together a free WordPress training. You can check that out at websiteprofitcourse.com/WP101. Now, if you enjoy working with WordPress the same way that I did and want to take your skills and start freelancing, grab my cheat sheet, 15 tools to start your web design business. You can find that on my homepage, websiteprofitcourse.com. And that includes the premium theme that I use, which is Divi. They kind of solved the WordPress full site editing problem. So they got more features than what WordPress currently offers. And recently I switched over pretty much all of my personal websites and client websites to Divi. So if you want to check out that along with a bunch of other tools, grab that cheat sheet. All of these links that I mentioned today will be in the description below, including the one-page tutorial guide if you want to recreate what we went through today. Last but not least, give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. If you have any problems along the way, you got any questions, leave them in the comments below. I'm interested in your experience with full site editing and whether you're new to WordPress and just learning it, or if you're a longtime WordPress user and you're getting used to it from the old system. And lastly, make sure you subscribe to my channel so you can see all future WordPress tutorials and web design freelancing videos. Thanks for making it to the end, and I'll link up a few other videos here if you want to keep on learning.